welcome back to another day in the arena. It's me, it's CGB, and today in the arena, you may have noticed, we have a very special guest just over there to stage right, hailing from the United States. Mythic Invitational competitor, MTGNerdGirl, welcome to the show. How are you?
Good, thanks for having me.
Well, why don't you quickly introduce yourself to the viewers, tell them where you're from, how long you've played Magic, something along those lines.
I've been playing Magic for a really long time, about 18 years. Also, guys, please forgive me, I'm kind of losing my voice. I think I have some of the, convention nerd plague, so sorry about that. Alright, so I've been playing Magic about 18 years. I grew up on the West Coast, so the competitive scene isn't quite as steep, but I've done a lot of traveling for tournaments and events, and I've had some reasonably good showings, and I also stream full-time, which is why I think I was invited to the Invitational.
Indeed, and you are... I saw a stat thing posted somewhere, like you're in the top 10 of Magic streamers in terms of watched minutes. Is that right?
It depends on the month. Sometimes I play a ton and I'm having a lot of fun. It depends on what draft format is currently in the rotation, and sometimes I just gets really stuck on a variety game. Sometimes Darkest Dungeon. My recent thing is Don't Starve Together. I love playing that with my viewers, so that eats into my Magic hours sometimes.
And you mentioned drafting and the draft season. Is that I'm kind of spoiling it. I think I've said it before on the channel, but that is your specialty, right?
It is. At least I like to think it is. I mean, I still suck at it, but it's fine.
So when when it became time to enter the Mythic Invitational, you registered 2 decks. One was Mono Red, which we've got here on the screen right now. Do you have any thoughts about the Mono Red deck now that you've played it and that you've played the tournament? Why did you choose it, and what would you change about it?
So the Mono Red deck was a choice I didn't want to make because the Invitational is something that Wizards designed to showcase players and bring us into the world of esports, and a lot of people have a very negative feel towards Mono Red. So if possible, I wanted to avoid it, but as you can see, that really didn't happen. I thought it was going to be one of the best decks to take, and yeah, I think it was really solid. It performed very well for me at the event. The only thing that I was on the fence about was the difference between the Frenzy and the, help me with the name here.
Risk Factor?
That one, yeah. I actually didn't really test the Risk Factor as much as I would have liked, but to kind of get a feel for the difference. But I mean, I really enjoyed the Frenzy, so.
You certainly did enjoy the Frenzy, as I'm sure we're going to get into. Viewers of my channel probably know by now that I hate losing to Mono Red. That there's nothing I despise much more than Mono Red, but I know that when we were talking about this deck, the idea was that even if it wasn't favored in a matchup, it could just steal the game. It just had kind of the craziest best draws you could have. If you run hot, you can just steal the game. I remember that being a lot of the appeal. And yeah, I thought the Frenzy treated you really well. I still wouldn't trade it for the Risk Factors.
It did, yeah. The nice thing about this deck is that if you draw well, it really doesn't matter what you're playing against. And as a limited player, limited being my focus, I really did want a deck that was a little bit less skill intensive, and this was definitely fit all those requirements.
The other deck that you picked was very different. Nobody else had a giant green monsters deck with blue in it for counter magic. So this one, as coined, Disruptive Aggro. Pretty cool name.
I didn't name it that, but that's a sexy name.
Yeah, that was a pretty nice one for coverage. I wondered what the hell they would say about it. But anyway, how about this deck? Is there anything you'd change about this deck, and what was it specifically there to do?
So I loved this deck. When I was testing for the Invitational, we're going against 32 members of the MPL. Top 16 is the golden number, and so the odds are just not there for you, right? The MPL are just so good. They've been playing this format standard for 10 to 20 years, So in a month and a half worth of prep, because we didn't have that much time, like that much notice leading into the Invitational, so I just didn't have as much time to prep. Plus, I really just don't like standards, so
Yeah,
I maybe didn't practice as much as I maybe could have. But so I needed to come up with a way to get an edge, and that isn't going to be using the best deck and playing it 100% correctly, because I just don't have the experience. Even if I had tried my heart out, I wouldn't have the experience that some of these other players have, just because they are so good at like understanding 60 card formats. So how was I going to do this? I was going to do this by getting a leg up on the meta and running a gamble, deciding what I thought was going to be the most common in the format, and just tuning my decks against it. And if I got paired up against something else with cards that are maybe not the strongest in the format, then so be it. And then hopefully just get the edge off of the tuned decks.
Yeah, and I would say that at least for some members of the MPL, I know that they were immediately like, oh God, when they saw this list, because what I remember we talked about was if they're running red and Esper, which we thought would be a pretty popular combination, this deck is solid against both. So you have something for sure that you can take to game 3. For those who don't know, really quick, Duo Standard at the Mythic Invitational. I know I've talked about it before, but if you're just tuning in, you have 2 decks and you play each of those in like a best of 1 way. And if both players win 1 game, then there's a 3rd game and you get to choose your deck for the 3rd game. So if you can somehow get in a position where you have a deck that is good against both of their decks that you can pick for game 3, then you are advantaged. And that is what this specific deck was. It was good against both red and it was good against Esper. And if that combination is what the players brought, then we would know exactly what to do for a game 3 type scenario. Now, in hindsight, red and Esper was a popular combination. Many very, very good players brought it, but it wasn't the most popular. Mono white turned out to be the most popular. However,
we did get a little lucky though.
We got a little lucky.
My pod didn't have any white. My pod had all of the Esper red players.
Except for round 1, which we're about to get into. So, do you remember, I'm sure you do, what was the exact combination of 2 decks we did not want to play in round 1?
I did not want to play mono white. So when tuning the deck, we decided, okay, these are the 3 things we think we're going to go against. Esper, red, and white. We can't tune against all of them, so let's just pick 2. And we picked the 2 we thought was the most, and Esper and red. This deck is really bad against white. They go too wide, and there's like not anything I can do about it.
Yep.
Also, like red has to use 2 things to burn down like my Steel Leafs versus the Conclave Tribunal, which is just 1 card, which really takes away that edge for me. So I didn't want to see the white. And then the other thing in testing, which we didn't think was going to be a very big issue, I cannot beat a Rekindling Phoenix to save my life.
Yep, I've got that card highlighted on the screen right now. Yep.
If you have one of them out, like I don't know, 70-30 dog. And if you have 2 of them out, the game's done. Like there's this, I cannot win. Physically cannot make anything happen.
And so along comes streamer Jamie Topples, your very first opponent, and her combination of decks, Rekindling Phoenix Jund and Mono White. And
yes.
How did you feel when you read those deck lists?
She handed me her deck list because during the event, especially for the first pod, all of the deck lists weren't public. So we had like these little sheets we had 2 papers, one with like our login information because we had special accounts. The decks were actually like built by Wizards. And it had all the like fancy new art stuff and that kind of thing. And we had another one with our deck lists. So 10 minutes before each event or each round, we would trade deck list sheets so we could like reference them and read the deck lists. And I look at her deck list, and the first one on the left that I look at first is a deck that I really didn't know was very uncommon. I think I've only played it against it on the ladder like once, so I had never really even considered it. And I'm scrolling down the cards. I'm like, this is weird. This is weird. This is fine. This is fine. And then I'm like, oh crap! For Rekindling Phoenix, I was not happy.
Yeah, I can imagine that feeling. So that round, is there a story that stands out to you from that first round?
the headliner would be that I should have lost the round.
You should have lost your very first round. Holy cow.
Yes. So game 1, I was being absolutely obliterated. I was dead no matter what I did. I was stuck on 2. I just didn't have anything. I had 1 card that cost 2. I was actually on mono red. So I had a Steamkin out from the prior turn, and she had curved out perfectly, like 1-drop, 2-drop, double 2-drop, I think, going into my turn 3 then. And I just had nothing. The only thing I could cast was the Pyromancer, to which I would then just have to like chump across the board. So I made the decision to instead just run the gamble. I figured if I was damned if I do, damned if I don't. So I just ran my 1/1 Steamkin into her army of 2/2s and 3/3s that I just had no instance to deal with. And I got very lucky that she decided to play around the double shock, because the play wasn't terrible, right? Because if I have 2 1-drop spells, then I just eat her guy for free and like deal a bunch of damage to her face. So there was like a reason behind it, but she ended up taking the 1 damage, which allowed me to like light up the stage and proceed to hit land and curve out and play like another Steamkin into like double Chain Whirler next turn and blow up her entire board and come back from what should have been a absolute smash.
So I don't think you could have scripted this. Round 1, your worst matchup, and you have to run basically a bluff. You just ran your Steamkin into nothing. You didn't have it in your hand to punish her.
No.
How was your heart rate? How are you feeling?
I was okay. Thankfully, this was the first event that was... My first match was not on like stage. I think if I had been on camera, I don't know what I would have done. I think I might have maybe played more conservatively. I really don't know. I felt like I was dead, so I felt like I'm just gonna run the Steamkin in and like run the only out I have.
I love that so much. Okay, now in honor of that story and that matchup, we're gonna play a quick direct challenge game and see if you can run that bluff and that those shenanigans on me. I'll be playing the Topples Jund. You go ahead and queue up the red deck, and we'll get into a game.
Let's do it. So what else about this match? In game 2, I took my Simic deck versus the mono white, which proceeded to get absolutely smashed. The game was not even close. Which brought us to a very, very interesting game 3. It was a lot of top decking nonsense. Like a lot. Topples got very lucky to get out of a hole, and in doing so, got me into a hole I thought I was never going to get to be able to get out of.
May I fill that in really quick? Topples hits the turn 4 Chain Whirler status statue to wipe out 2 runaway Steamkins, a Viashino Pyromancer, and I think it was a Goblin Chain Whirler from your board. Like, yep. Devastating.
And she had nothing on board. Like, she was just... And just like so dead. And she only has, I think, 2 of those in her deck, and she didn't have it in her hand, she told me later. So she felt like infinitely dead to me. And then she proceeds to like dump out her hand and get this massive board state that there's just like no way I can come back from. Thankfully, I was able to answer that by top decking the Frenzy and burning her out for literally exactly damage. I ended up missing 1 point of damage earlier, and the last card and my last land was a Wizard's Lightning. So if it had been a shock, I would have ended up losing the game for myself because I had missed a point earlier in the game. But it wasn't. It was Wizard Lightning, so...
Ta-da! Red deck.
It was all good. Easy game.
Why don't you tell people why you missed that point of damage?
Oh God. So I missed that point of damage kind of for 2 reasons.
I'll tell you the reason I remember. You blamed me.
Yes, so after opening hand in game 2, there was like nobody there. I was like on the edge of the like display area in the back. There's like a glass mirror there, but there was nobody there before. And so I look back in game 2 and I see CGB like staring at the window, like watching the match, because he helped like, you know, tune the decks and coach me, so rightfully so. But yeah, I got very nervous knowing that my coach was watching.
Aw. I strategically tried not to get seen, but yeah. Missed that point of damage. But I'm also going to fill in your frenzy for you a little bit, tell you a little, because I remember this very well. So you left the opponent at 9, and you pretty much played out your hand and played the frenzy, but her board was getting extremely wide. You had one Goblin Chainwhirler to chump block with. I think at some point she had 16 points of damage. Your first frenzy turn, you hit a lightning strike, got her to 6, but then it fizzled. And so she slammed you with like a ridiculous amount of damage. You had to chump with your Chainwhirler. You were down to, I think, 3? Something absurdly low, 3 or 4. I'm not sure which. And just the way that the last turn played out was find a lightning strike, find something else that didn't do it, find a land. No, not the land. Then it was light up the stage with 1 mana left, and it had a Get-To Lava Runner and a mountain. And you had to play the Lava Runner, and the top card had to be Lightning Strike. Or no, Wizard's Lightning. Had to be Wizard's Lightning.
Yeah, had to be. Couldn't have been a Lightning Strike. I had 1 land left at the end.
And there it was. And that was round 1. That's like the start of the journey, everybody.
And if I had drawn, instead of the Lava Runner, if I had drawn the Pyromancer, I wouldn't have had enough mana, right? Like, it needed to be a 1-drop wizard plus the 1-drop spell, like, perfect.
Yeah, it was. It was the red draw that I just hate so much when it happens on ladder. But let's see what the frenzy can do this time. Okay, you've got your own Chainwhirler here. Bye-bye, crab people.
Crab people, rip.
Yep, F's in chat for the crab people. I've got a card here I didn't see her play.
Yeah.
That's your favorite.
That is not my favorite, in fact.
It was one of those things when we were testing against this card, it's like, oh, God, I hope not many people bring this, because as good as the deck choices were against certain parts of the field, this was a very scary card to play against.
So I have Wizard's Lightning on top.
Ooh. Is it your upkeep or main? Okay, it's main.
Yeah, it's main.
What am I supposed to do with that?
I don't know.
No, neither do I.
Like, you can't block with a Rekindling Phoenix, right? Like, that just seems so bad against red.
It seems absolutely terrible. Basically throwing it away. But blocking with the Thorn Lieutenant's pretty... I mean, just to save 3 damage. I guess it depends on my hand, and I think what I'm trying to do is set up some kind of an awkward race. Also, giving up Spectacle's so bad here. So, like, what good is the Thorn Lieutenant?
You've been stuck on land, but then, like, another chump just seems so bad, too.
Yeah, I think I have to take it. I don't think that throwing away board position lets me race. This is the bind of Experimental Frenzy. If I sit back, I will eventually get lit on fire and die. And if I just throw away my board, I'll just get run over.
So this is pretty much exactly what our playtesting looked like in leading up to the Invitational, actually. CGB and I did 5-hour sessions almost, several days. And yeah, it looked very, very much like this.
The two of us just kind of going over this and that, yeah.
Yeah, playing open-handed essentially and like discussing like walkthroughs and stuff. And yeah, it was really, really helpful.
Oh, you caught that, huh?
Caught what?
The stick. All right. Looking like a low life total. This time I do have to get in there. So we'll go here, here, and I'm ready for my lightning strike. But first, I'm at least going to go for an ambush.
Irrelevant. Frenzy brings it home. The nice thing too is like if you get really desperate too, you can like crack the frenzy and your hand is just like chock full of goodies again.
Yeah, I can only imagine how much burn is in your hand. Okay, next round. Autumn. Mythic Championship, Mythic Championship Cleveland champion. Without question, they are possibly the hottest player on tour in Magic right now. Their top 8 performance at the Mythic Championship with Mono Blue is hailed by so many as an amazingly great performance. This is your opponent in round 2, and you're on that feature match stage. What's going through your mind?
Well, it was my very first feature match. I've played in a lot of GPs, but I've done reasonably well in cached, but I've always managed to dodge the feature. And I don't really like being on camera, or I don't know. For a streamer, I'm very shy. My camera's always very small. I'm always wearing like sweaters and stuff. And I mean, at the time this was being aired to like, I don't know, it was still pretty low for, I think, the overall numbers.
Yeah,
it was like 50,000 people, I mean.
Yeah, that's all. 50,000-ish
just
people.
50,000.
Yeah.
So I was really nervous, and I know Autumn is one of the best players out there, and one of the most popular, and that made it even harder because at that point there's like a lot on the line for me to like do well, is that I know a lot of eyes are on Autumn. So yeah, it was a very, very pressure-filled match for sure.
What do you remember most from it? What's your best story from this match?
Best story from the match. Well, other than my best thing about the whole match was winning. But my deck my Simic deck did not perform exactly like I had hoped. I didn't end up really having any of the counters against Autumn for the Esper match, but the Nullhide did manage to come through and bring it home. Autumn was able to untap Enkaya's Wrath on 5 land, and on my turn, I played the Nullhide Ferox. I had gotten enough damage in to get her to like, I think 3 or 4.
Yeah.
And so I just untapped Nullhide Ferox, and they did not draw a land. So they weren't able to cast the removal spell because you have to pay 2 for the Nullhide Ferox. The removal spell is the Vraska's Contempt. So they would have needed 6 mana to manage that, and couldn't quite kill it, so I got to untap and crush. So that was really, really fortunate.
Awesome. Let's run that one back. See if you can get the best of Autumn's Acuity deck again. Here in a more casual setting. No big stage, no sparklers this time.
I thought my hair was going to catch on fire during that match. Like when I came out on stage, I saw like the sparkler, like it got like kind of in my hair, and I was just like trying to dodge it.
I've launched up the challenge. Are you coming in?
Oh, I thought I was. I think I challenged somebody else on accident.
Oopsie. It's all right.
I think I just hit play.
No worries.
Sorry, YouTube.
YouTube can wait. So the matchup, this match was covered, and the video is on YouTube. You can find it. I'm sure if you search for Autumn and MTGNerdGirl, it will come up very quickly. It's on the official Magic Esports page, so you can watch the entire game. And I was ecstatic with how well you sequenced your threats in this match. You didn't have the easy out of counterspell, so you had to play your creatures in the right order. And particularly going for a Galta, knowing that it would get absorbed, as some of you will see if you want to watch that match, I really loved it. I thought it was excellent, because if you had any other creature on that final, what would turn out to be the final turn, if you had deployed any other threat that turn, if you had played your Nullhide earlier in the match for any reason, you would probably not have won that game, because of the way that Autumn's hand was stacked with Moment of Craving and double Vraska's Contempt from that point. So I can't say enough about how well you sequenced that situation. So bravo, kudos. I'm still really high about it myself.
I did get a little lucky in that I will admit I stumbled upon the correct sequence, but I was very on the fence and very unsure of the play there. So
you say that, but I've told you so many times in this process that you have good instincts and that you should trust them. So even if you can't put your finger on why it worked, I have a feeling it worked for the right reason.
Yeah, and I did, but like just the fact that I was so unsure about it was part of the issue.
I know that commentary, they really liked the play with Galta, even though you were running it into a counter. They saw exactly what you were going for.
Yeah, the two matches I played, the first thing is though I actually really do disagree with coverage on like the first match. So I thought that was really interesting. That they agreed with me when I didn't know what I was doing, and then when I felt like I knew what I was doing, like, oh, this is a misplay. She's gonna play in the syncopate. I was like, what are you talking about? Light up the stage is way more valuable than like rando pyromancer. I did play around the syncopate. I got the pyromancer killed. That was the point.
I agree with that too. Anybody who watches the coverage from the beginning, we're talking about, I believe is it Marshall? Marshall was in the booth with Dave Williams at the time, right? Yeah, that's right. Mm-hmm. Well, I'm having some mana issues. Things not looking great.
I kind of am too. I have Nullhide in my hand, but I also have Negate in my hand. So I feel like what I have on the board is good enough with a Negate and you being like slightly stuck. If I hit one land, it's like Nullhide into like negate your answer.
Yeah. So I think I'm just stuck. I think I have a certain play that I have to make here. And I'm pretty sure it just loses because I know this deck. Oops. I meant to cast that on your upkeep and I discarded instead. That's how good I'm doing here, but it doesn't matter because you've got the counter spell here. But yeah, I once again have the Nezahal Primal Tide in my hand, which is something that happened in your match with Autumn as well. That Nezahal just shows up way too early.
Yeah, so this is exactly what like the ideal performance of the deck is, to just get a couple of really early green threats and then just be able to protect them with counter magic.
And then comes round 3. You're back on the feature match stage. You're playing against newly signed Tempo Storm teammate Wyatt Darby, a Pro Tour champion, an absolutely fabulous streamer, I might add. He's like, if I could up my game at streaming, I'd want to be more like Wyatt Darby. Kind of a little streamer crush over here. Boy. It's true. So you're playing one of my heroes, and I mean that. And the battle is exactly what we prepared for. It's red and it's Esper. So what did you think about this match? What's on your mind? And what were some highlights?
So this is the win and in. So the winner of this just like locks up day 2 immediately. So the pressure was pretty high. Also from like a team perspective, it really sucked to have to play my own teammate. Neither one of us were going to be knocked out because we don't go to X2, we go to X1. So then we have to win the next 2 rounds in order to day 2. So it's still pretty tough. It wasn't quite as easy as like if you lose this, you have to win 1 more, which I think would have been a lot easier to deal with. But also like he's a much more well-known player. So in the eyes of like my team, it almost felt like it was like time to prove myself. And yeah, I was like really nervous to play a teammate for sure.
I love that attitude. I love that you took it as a chance to prove yourself. So in the games, just the quick recap would be like the first game was basically you got mana screwed, right?
Yep. I played red and he played red and he drew well and I did not.
And I remember you saying to me that you felt like that was the moment when Cinderella turned back into a pumpkin or something and the clock struck midnight and maybe the run was over.
It felt like it was all going away at that point, being down a game.
And my story for that is I was sitting next to a guy who we didn't really talk. I don't know who he was, but he just says to me under his breath, "That's rough." And I looked at him really quick and I said, "She's going to win." And so let's I know that you love game 2. Let's talk about game 2.
Oh man, game 2 with Wyatt was probably my favorite game of the entire event. And that's like the one game I would have wanted to have like video evidence of, because the deck did so well. My Simic deck, it did exactly what I wanted it to do. And it played out so beautiful. So it's the Simic versus the Esper, and he goes on end of turn, my turn. I had just played a Golta, and I was able to leave three mana open on turn 5. And he goes end of turn, kill your guy, and I'm like, Spell Pierce, and he's like, okay, untap Kaya's Wrath, and I'm like, negate, proceed to smash you with Golta, and just having both of those counters was just the icing on the weekend for me. Honestly, we tuned this deck to do something, and there were so few matches in the Invitational that, like, in order to get to set up right, it seemed like it would be very, very difficult. And yeah, it was just really exciting.
Yeah, it was really awesome to watch too. Let's see if you can do it again. So I'm gonna launch a match right now.
All right. Oops. Playing with stuff on my desk, I keep dropping them.
I'm also sure that people around the world, please, if you're watching this video, put in chat if you would love to see this deck just smash Esper on camera, because I know for a fact that my viewers are frustrated with the endless Esper barrage.
I was as well. That's why, like, Esper and Red was just, I don't know, testing was very just over and over and over again with those two decks.
Tedious is a word that comes to mind. Yeah. Especially this card. Oh. Well then. It does seem like these are the biggest problems. I want to take the Thorn Lieutenant really badly and mess up your curve. The problem is if you draw another 2-drop anyway, it's such a bad, like it's such a big mistake if you draw another 2-drop. If I take one of the negates, though, I still might just lose to the other one. It's so mean. I think I'm going to go for the Thorn Lieutenant and hope for the best. And this doesn't line up very well against you, so that has to go to the graveyard. All right, no 2-drop. My life
Next time, Gadget. Next time.
Oh! You would get that reference. That means I get to do this. Not many people get this.
Next time, Gadget. Next time.
Why you always gotta one-up me?
Sorry, I just it's one of my good impressions. All right, decisions. Oh boy, this might be revenge of the Esper Mage. But we'll see, You've got some tricks up your sleeve, I'm sure.
Not really, my hand's kind of light.
Oh man, my hand is ridiculous. My draw is ridiculous. You've had the better of me twice. You've had the better of me twice today already. But good old Teferi, the hero of Dominaria.
Yeah.
Oh, that creature is very large.
It is, but I have a feeling with Teferi,
yeah,
it's not going to matter.
I have to make it go away. But this is better than me ticking up Teferi and just killing it.
Poor little Nullhide, he just wanted to hang out.
Mm-hmm. Such a oh crap, moment when the opponent gets that Nullhide down. Oh man. And you have the negates. So I can fight over this with my mana now, or I could save it for the future. The downside is if I absorb this and you negate it, I don't get the 3 life. The upside is if I find a removal spell, I get to protect my Teferi, and I get to have mana open on my next turn, which matters because of the cards in my hand. So I actually think the right play is to pick this fight now.
I think I have to negate it. If I don't get something on the board, then things are not going to continue to go well.
Oh yeah, I think that's a solid negate. Ooh, keeps the Walker. Means that you probably have another Branchy in your hand, something like that.
You know what? I'm not done yet.
And mortify that now before you get to untap, and then untap some lands with Teferi. I know, this deck, right? So I got to be the Esper Mage most of testing, which was, you know, I'm pretty happy playing Esper most of the time. I did not always have fun in testing because playing around all the counter spells could be a really tedious experience.
It sure can.
So does that mean you've got a Spell Pierce? Gonna try this, see what happens. Okay. Thought about shooting the elf too, but it doesn't feel like you keep the walker unless your last card were also an explore creature.
Good call.
Sorry, big jolly green giant.
Womp womp womp. This is also how Esper can go.
Yes, it is. Yes, it is. But it's worth noting that this game would have been completely 100% different if the play and draw were flipped. The fact that I got to thought erase the 2-drop, then absorb the 3, or mortify the 3-drop and absorb the next thing, you just never really got on the front foot. So, good old play and draw in Magic.
Mm-hmm.
And this is fine. I'll go for it before the negate is open. And now I get to be exceptionally rude. I drew all 4 absorbs.
All 4 absorbs?
All 4
Goodness.
absorbs, yep. Revenge of the Esper deck.
Oh, man.
Your story was way cooler than that game, I'm sorry.
It's okay, I won it when it mattered.
Okay, round 4 in the top 16. Back on the big stage on Saturday. And your opponent is a friend of yours. Jess is the first woman to, and only woman, to be a Grand Prix champion. So you know already that you're in for a fight. And she brought a deck that, from the moment I saw this deck list, shortly after you got the pairings, I was like, what are we gonna do? What the hell are we gonna do? This Naya Angels deck is a house. What's going through your mind for this matchup?
I honestly don't like either one of my decks against the Angels. I feel like overall, no matter which way the pairings get flipped, I am going to be a dog on either of the matches, really. So this is kind of like round 1 for me, day 1, where it's just like, well, we just got to kind of hope for the best and try to get a little lucky, and I think that's exactly what I did.
Indeed. Let's go ahead and launch the game, and we can talk more about what happened a little bit as we go.
Sure.
So I have been I have been on the receiving end of some red draws, and I have been able to watch certain red draws. This was a red draw that you put on this one. Holy cow!
Yeah. So the first for each match leading into, you know, the first game of a match, they made us draw our hand, and then it took them a while, like coverage, to like go over all the people and discuss what was going on. So you have to like stare at your opening hand for like 5 to 10 minutes sometimes. And I had the perfect red draw, and the deck I was the most scared about was the Angels deck. So the entire like 10 minutes, I'm like, okay, if I have a chance to beat her Angels, it's going to be with this draw. So I was like, please let it be the Angels. Please let it be the Angels. And again, things went in my favor, and it was indeed.
Yeah, I think we all know. I don't know if we're going to see it here this time, but it was one of those like 1-drop and Runaway Steamkin and light up the stage and cast what felt like 100 spells. Was there any point where you were even concerned, or were like by turn 2 were you just like, oh, we're rolling, this is it?
So if I remember correctly, the deck doesn't have like a whole bunch of removal, and like I said, I just had like the Stone Cold Nuts, and I was able to just kind of roll the game. It felt very good, even when she started to get some creatures on the board. I always felt like I had like stuff to do and enough reach to potentially go over the top regardless. I just needed to race her before she could get out the life gain angel, right? It's really like the only thing I have to worry about.
4 Lyras. 4 freaking Lyras. Also, Shalai can be a real house, a real pain for a red deck. But, I mean, I just remember it was turn 3. I think it was like turn 3 and you had already cast like 6 spells. Something absurd.
Yeah. Like I said, if I was going to beat that deck with either one of mine, it needed to be right then. Because I was not going to beat it with my green deck for sure.
Now, we can talk about the green deck a little as you roll the hell out of me again here. Oh my goodness. So, I also really enjoyed that game of this match. It was a case of Temur Reclamation, and she had a Niv on the battlefield, but you had a giant Wild Growth Walker. There was a lot going on in that game as well.
Yeah, it was really close.
There was a moment, and I think that what Jess was trying to set up, and I'm sure she was getting enough damage off a fiery cannonade and possibly an expansion explosion on that cannonade to clean up your larger threats. But instead what happened is you played a Merfolk Branchwalker. If Jess was playing against the Galta, she could have cast the cannonade and you would have killed the Branchwalker with the trigger on the stack, and you wouldn't have been able to Galta. But because she was playing to get like the best cannonade possible, the Galta came down, and you still had 1 mana for Spell Pierce, which she knew about but couldn't quite play around. It was a really close game, and yeah, that was another super exciting game. Unlike this one, which, wow, you did
red
it.
Doing red things.
You did it again. Oh man. So I'm sure that some of my viewers right now are like, "What? How the hell did you test with her if she just was red rolling you all the time?" They know how hard I tilt when this happens to me.
I mean, in testing, like, we didn't actually test the red that much, because it's already kind of like, proven. I feel like the bulk of the testing was the Simic deck trying to like, okay, well, we started with this one deck list, and it's like, well, we're not winning this consistently enough because the only times you're winning is when you have like Golta. So we like, okay, maybe we should add another one. Take this out. Like, okay, well, I mean, the counters are cute, but we only started with 4 of them, so like it just wasn't consistent enough against the Esper anyway. So like the negative of having the islands, it was all very wonky. So
yeah, the tuning process was really fun for that deck. It was a card here and a card there, and then suddenly it seemed like when you hit the balance, what was happening was Galta backed up by counter magic, and every time that happened, it was like you couldn't lose. Galta with a Spell Pierce or Galta with a Negate was just, what were they going to do? Yeah,
it was amazing. So we ended up adding, three more Pierces. We took away 2 of the Krasis because I was drawing too many of them.
Yeah, not enough power. On turn 4, playing a 2/2 flyer was usually not the trick, right?
Mm-hmm.
So, at this point, you're 4-0 in the Invitational, and you go into round 5. Now, I remember being very excited because I thought you were favored in this round, but magic is magic.
Too.
So, do you want to tell any stories from round 5?
Yeah, so the 2, round 1 and round 4, the ones where I thought I was like the underdog, clean, managed to get there, and then I'm like, okay, this one should be easy. Like, I feel like either way the matchups go, I feel like I'm reasonably favored. We discussed it like on the sidelines before the match. We're like, you just can't, like, the only thing we have to try to avoid is like the double Curious Obsession. And of course my opponent goes like, round 1 Wizard guy, round 2 double Curious Obsession, and then turn 3 third Curious Obsession, hold open Wizard's Retort.
And it should also be said, you won game 1, right? In the Red Mirror, I think it was. You won? Yeah.
Yeah.
So
and I lost to blue.
Yeah, that's right. This was the only round I couldn't see from the rail, so I couldn't see what was happening on the screen. I remember how excited I was when you gave me the thumbs up for game 1. At that point,
I think it was the other way around, actually. I think I lost the first round, the blue, and then the second one was the red, which I managed to get there. And then the next one died again.
Do you remember anything from that game 3?
Game 3 was kind of uneventful. It was just kind of like a better draw. It wasn't like, I can't say I was super land screwed or anything. It's just my things didn't line up very well.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah,
Magic,
it was a good match, I think.
Yeah, magic happens for sure. Particularly still, like, really, did the double Curious Obsession draw in that spot at that time? Unbelievable.
Yeah.
By the way, this was Peter Sikurik, a canister, who ended up getting to the finals of the event. He lost in the very, very finals. Brought himself home a lot of dollars. And how do you feel about emotes?
Oh, God. Yeah, so I'm not gonna lie, I was a little annoyed. It wasn't even so much in my match, but in day 1, I wasn't in the same pod as him, I don't believe. So we were watching coverage, and like he just kept emoting everybody, like your go, your go, your go, your go, and he would like board wipe them and be like, "Oops," like. I couldn't believe it.
It definitely gave him sort of his own personality at the event, which I hope is what he went for. I hope he didn't emote you too much. Maybe he only did it with people he knows. It's kind of hard to say. He emoted me
as soon as we sat down. Like, he was like double Curious Obsession. Oops.
Oh, God. Oh.
Yeah, I immediately muted him. Like, when I stream, I don't mute people. Like, I don't really mind so much. But it did feel a little bad to have, like, a pro, like, kind of taking those shots. I don't know. It seemed weird, but...
Chat,
everybody's got their own thing.
Hey, if you're in comments, how do you feel about getting emoted oops after a double Curious Obsession start? Please, leave me some comments. Leave MTGNerdGirl and I some comments on that. So, that round goes down. You have an hour to decompress because you won your first round. And then we go to the last, what would turn out to be the last round. You're playing against the Player of the Year, the reigning Player of the Year, Luis Salvato. Pride and Joy of Argentina. You're on the feature match stage. It's kind of surreal to look back and think about how close you really were to that top 4 on a number of occasions. A few cards this way, a few cards that way. This match is very similar. What do you remember about this match?
I remember it going really poorly.
I don't think it went as poor as you think. I think it really just came down to that last game. So, do you remember the missed lethal from the reigning Player of the Year? Do you remember this?
Oh, yeah. That was very strange. So I was against his mono white, and I'm like completely tapped out, and he has all of the lethal he needs just like on the board.
Just had to turn it all sideways.
He just had to turn it sideways, and I was tapped out. But he decides to only attack, allow chump the erases for one of them, take the 2 from a 2/3 flyer, go down to 3. So now all I need to do is either draw a life gain card with it, which is one of my explore creatures, or another Crisis. Like, I have a ton of answers here. I can also just draw like a big creature that can like get him on the crackback, because I now have 2 turns because I'm at 3 and he has a 2/3 flyer. And he has like very little or no cards in hand. Pretty sure he has no cards in hand. He like top decks another flyer to like shorten the clock by 1 turn. In the next turn, and I just like draw blank. So it was really close, but like he had me dead several turns prior, and I feel like he was giving me the answer or like the out, and I was just like, I want to take the out, just like, God damn it.
And you played for it you really played for it well. I could see Salvato's side of things. I could not see your screen. It was one of those white draws where it's like he was ahead the whole game, like firmly in the lead. And It was like he was just tightening the noose on you again and again. Your Hydroid Crassus tried to get you back in there. He had lethal on board. He didn't go for it. Hard to say. You were tapped out. There was nothing you could have done. The deck lists were known. So you had this opportunity.
I think the issue was that like he was so set on like being able to fly over the top, and he didn't have lethal with the flyer, so I just don't think he like evaluated the rest of the ground creatures.
Yeah, I think so. And then that the last turn, like you had a Gulta, you got a big attack in, you got him to, I think, 3 life.
Mm-hmm.
And if you had any Explorer creature in your hand, like I was sitting next to Glenn from Tempo Storm, and he was asking what was going on, and I'm like, well, she's in huge trouble unless she has a Wild Growth Walker and Explorer creature, and then she's going to steal this, and it's going to be legendary. And you attacked, and then you're pausing, and I'm like, oh God, please, one time,
Or a crisis.
one time, and your first play is the Wild Growth Walker, and I'm like, oh my God, this could be it, but it wasn't it. And yeah, very close, and very well. You almost got that one, which I think was so far out of reach for many people. He was ahead the whole game. Unbelievable.
Yeah, I mean, and I should have been dead several turns prior. So I had the Walker in my hand for a couple of turns, actually, but I was like a little stuck on mana and just like couldn't like get everything out. And I already had played one Krasis, so I kind of got to fill up my hand a little bit. So my outs there was just like either of the Explorer creatures would give me enough to survive another turn and kill him with Gulta, or the second Krasis.
The second game, you played very well. You positioned your threats well. It's red versus Esper. I could watch his side, so I always knew what he had in hand. So I know that your sequencing, from what I could guess was in your hand, was really good. You positioned yourself into a place where your Frenzy would resolve, and it stuck for a while before the Teferi could tuck it. And yeah, it just nickeled and dimed him out. He just couldn't handle it. It was the red deck being very good to you. Then game 3 was went with red. He kept a hand that was very good against red. In hindsight, if it had been green, I think his hand would have been very weak against it, but we played the numbers game, and I think he made the right choice. He just got pretty lucky on that one. He kept a 2-lander, but curved out to 6 with no problem, and just it didn't quite go your way, which is too bad.
Welcome to Best of One.
Welcome to Best of One. However, your 4-2 finish, good for, like, they didn't place the top 16, just being in the top 16, very big deal. I will say for sure that I was incredibly impressed with how you handled yourself.
Thank you.
You scooped at the appropriate time before Teferi exiled all of your permanents. You shook his hand, you walked off that stage, and you had your head high, and I was just really impressed with how you handled the stage and the whole scenario, considering that this is only the most viewed Magic tournament in the history of the game. And I was very impressed with you, and I know many others were as well. So I have nothing but kudos and points to throw at you for that. You get points, many points.
Couldn't do it without the coach.
Thank you. And it was really fun. It's the first time I've ever been able to coach Magic. For those who don't know or missed this part of my story times, I've coached other sports for 6 years, but I never thought I could coach Magic. So this was, and especially on the biggest stage, the grandest Magic stage that they've ever made. Just so happy to be a part of it. Go ahead.
It was really, really good. So like I have been a reasonably successful Magic player in my format in Limited. So I feel like the skill was there, but it was really, really like your standard insight. Without it, I would have never happened.
Thank you so much. But the bright side is the story isn't quite over. Why don't you tell us what's next for MTGNerdGirl and what's going to go on going forward?
Yeah, so actually this past week, we actually got an email from the esports reps for Wizards. And for those of us who top 16'd and aren't in the MPL, who already have the invites, I think there's 4 or 5 of us of the challengers, and we all got invites to London for the what was Pro Tour, now the Mythic Championships 2. Most of us are going to be deferring, actually, though. So we got invited to London, and it's very short notice, and Wizards knows that and are very willing to work with us on that. So they said, we have other options for you if you can't make it. So the next PT or championship is actually Barcelona in July, I believe. So I believe that's going to be my next big tournament. I'll be playing in some GPs, probably Denver and Seattle in the meantime. But yeah, Barcelona, looking forward to it.
For some players, it is always a dream to get to compete in the Pro Tour, now Mythic Championship. This is going to be, without question, an amazing event to attend. Barcelona in July will be gorgeous, I'm sure, and exciting. And I know that we're all rooting for you, and I hope to help and continue to help where I can. And I think that means we'll be doing some testing, and this probably won't be your last visit to the channel here. So I encourage everybody out there to go subscribe to MTGNerdGirl on YouTube. I'll let you tell them in just a minute what they can expect there. Also follow her on Twitch, where she streams literally just about every day. Like, a regular week is 7 days a week. You have a streamathon coming up. You can tell them about that in just a second. And also follow MTGNerdGirl on Twitter. So why don't you tell us what you've got going on with YouTube and with next week's streamathon, and then we'll wrap up this story time with CGB and MTG over here.
Thanks. I appreciate the really nice shout outs there. My Twitch channel is celebrating hitting 20,000 followers. So I have promised them a streamathon a week. I'm going to do 100 hours in 7 days. It's like 14-ish hours on average per day. Some days will be more, some days will be less.
So if you are watching this, she's probably online. Go now.
Probably, yeah. If I'm not asleep, I'll be live, pretty much. And then YouTube, I am really excited. I've been meaning to do YouTube, and it's something that coworkers and viewers have been pressuring me to do for a very long time. But I don't know, it's such a steep learning curve, and I'm starting at zero, so I kind of been putting it off. And I also didn't have any really good idea for content until yesterday. For whatever reason, I decided I play a lot of indie games for variety. So I decided to start finding really cool indie games and introducing them to people to shed some spotlight on smaller games that you might not ever have heard of. And it will also give you a chance to take a look at those games. I'm posting 1 hour of the intro gameplay, and I hope it will help people discover some new things that they can really get into.
Excellent. And I know I'll be a guest on one of those, of Don't Starve Together, which will be out soon. So make sure you check that out.
Yes, there will be a guest of CGB dying over.
I am the worst. I am the absolute worst. All right, I'm gonna bring us to the outro, so here we go. She gets to listen to a little bit of my shills. This will be fun. Thank you for watching this video. As always, I will see you in the next video. Please remember to head over to flipsidegaming.com and use the promo code CGB for the War of the Spark booster box giveaway. Every time you use that promo code on a purchase of $10 or more, you will get 10% off, and you'll get entered into a drawing to win an entire booster box of War of the Spark just for my community. That offer ends on May 6th, so make sure you go to flipsidegaming.com and use the promo code CGB. Thanks for watching. See you in the next one. If you enjoyed this video, please hit the like button, subscribe to the channel, or leave a comment. You can also support the channel on Patreon for special perks. Links are in the description. Our sponsors are HauntedFlower.com and FlipsideGaming.com. Haunted Flower sells officially licensed MTG apparel and accessories, and Flipside Gaming sells MTG cards and supplies. You can save 10% on either site with the promo code CGB, and it supports the channel at the same time. See you next time for another day in the arena. For now, it's me, it's CGB, signing out.